Welcome back. You're watching Showdown. All right, let's go to Canberra and see if we can poke a pair of politicians and make them fight each other. In the blue corner, representing the Liberal Party, we've got Kelly O'Dwyer, albeit wearing red. Thanks for your company.
Nice to be here.
And in the red corner, representing the Labor Party, we've got Ed Husic, albeit wearing a blue tie. You guys look like you've coordinated this deliberately. Ed, let's start with you. First question, straight into the serious side of politics. What kind of a husband are you? You've got a 4-week-old child back at home in Sydney, and rather than taking well-earned, leave to be able to be there for your child and wife, there you are, probably going out drinking after this. You're in Parliament House. You're not doing your duty at home.
Thanks, Peter. I just missed all that question. I had some audio problems. I'm sure that my wife, who's watching this now, will let me know what you asked.
She can take you through the detail, no doubt.
Yeah.
Should I not say, Peter, that he was just saying before how he's getting a great night's sleep while he's up here in Canberra?
This is fantastic.
No doubt he was.
Living in a concrete truck right now.
He's going to be on every single committee over the next 12 months as he works his way around the country to avoid his required responsibility at home, I'm willing to bet. But anyway,
I'm not pulling any Van Onselen techniques.
No, I don't do that. We'll get on to some issues that relate to my kids, because the New South Wales government have cut funding to independent schools, and I'm absolutely outraged because that affects my back pocket. So we'll get to that. But firstly, let me come back to you, Kelly O'Dwyer, if I can. I don't know if you heard, but I had Alexander Downer on the program a moment ago, and I asked him about foreign ownership and Cubby, and he was actually pretty critical of the National Party, certainly in relation to Barnaby Joyce, and he's trying to sort of praise Joe Hockey. He described him as courageous. I don't think he meant it in the Sir Humphrey sense of the word, but he described him as courageous for standing up the way that he did. Now, what's the position here? The Liberal Party room met today. Presumably you guys discussed this. Are you going to stand up strongly to Barnaby Joyce as a party?
Well, look, I don't want to get into specifics around my colleagues here, but it's fair to say, Peter, that we have a strong and consistent stand on foreign investment policies. We are absolutely for foreign investment. Foreign investment has helped build our country. We have strong foreign investment laws, and Joe Hockey has been simply articulating our strong support for those laws, the fact that we do support the current test, the fact that every piece of foreign investment by a state-owned enterprise has to be measured against whether or not it is going to be contrary to Australia's national interest. I know there's been some speculation in the media about changing that test and making it in the national interest. That would be a very substantial change, and as you know, we have reaffirmed in the coalition our commitment for the test to remain. Did you do that today in the party room?
Presumably you talked about this in the party room. Did the party room come behind Joe Hockey on this?
The party room didn't need to come behind Joe Hockey on this because, of course, we have already agreed our position on foreign investment. Nothing has changed in relation to that. That's been
But given Barnaby Joyce's comments, you must have discussed it at least. And if you discussed it, the party room would have backed their shadow treasurer, I assume.
Well, there's no question the party room backs Joe Hockey. I mean, it wasn't an issue that was discussed in the party room today, but certainly
you didn't
our
discuss
position...
it in the party room. It's like the major issue for the Liberal Party at the moment.
Well, at the moment, I've got to say to you, Peter, at the moment we've been focused on so many other issues. I mean, there was a lot of discussion today about Labor's black hole, the $120 billion. Where is the money going to be coming from all of their spending schemes that they're announcing, with no announcement as to where the money's coming from? We know that that's going to mean increased taxes for Australians. So there was quite a lot of discussion about that in the party room today, Peter.
I always know when I'm talking to serving politicians, they know how to segue themselves out of a line of questioning. It was so refreshing talking to Alexander Downer before the break. He was answering questions and not trying to get out of them. Speaking of which, Ed Husic, now you guys have played the ultimate populist card in relation to this super trawler. I think it's been named, what is it, the Able Tasman. They're going to have to rename it from that if they're going to not be allowed to fish in Australia. You guys are slapping a 2-year ban on them. Let me ask you this. Forget the value or otherwise of doing that. Couldn't you have done this a long time ago before they've sort of schlepped their way out here to now be told they can't fish off our shores?
No, because the simple reason is that Tony Burke, as the Environment Minister, had been asking for what was the breadth of his ministerial powers to deal with a vessel of this size. I mean, we've got a pretty good track record. When you look at 1991, we introduced the sort of fishery management framework that would allow for us to deal...
I can read the notes that the Prime Minister's office sent around in my own time. But what's your view on this?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you might want to give it to me now that you're telling me what you reckon the answer should be. But the bottom line is, this is a vessel that hasn't been thought, like over the 20 years, we haven't had to deal with a circumstance like this. So with changing circumstances, you need changing laws. And what you've had announced today by Tony Burke is to be able to give him the power, particularly with vessels of this size, to be able to deal with what impact that might have on fish stocks, what impact that might have on bycatch, and to be able to take into account that this is something that affects a number of states in terms of the stock across a number of states. So it's now giving him that power. So it's not a case that he had the power that he could pull the lever straight away and deal with it. And we're introducing legislation now to be able to give him those powers.
All right, well, hopefully after that press release discussion, we've still got some viewers. Kelly O'Dwyer, just quickly, what's the coalition presumably is going to back this?
Well, look, I mean, we're completely confused by the government's perspective on this. In 2009, you had the Environment Minister actually welcome, encourage and invite out this sort of vessel to Australian shores to fish here. They said it was going to be sustainable. They said that this was the right thing to do according to their fisheries strategy. And now today, because you've got a number of organisations like Get Up and the Greens and everybody else climbing on board to say that this is a problem, you've now got the Minister saying, actually, you know what, we don't think it's a good idea anymore. So they're putting a freeze on it.
Now I'm listening to the opposition leader's office's press release.
No, not at all. No. What has actually happened here is you've got the government on the one hand, putting the foot on the accelerator, and then the next minute putting their foot on the brake, and of course the whole car in this instance completely stalls. So they don't know what they're doing. They can't hold their position on any policy issue. This is just simply the latest example.
Well, if I can just say, for any of the Tasmanians that are watching this, those communities that were concerned by this, that basically got shoved aside as a claim that it was the Greens and Get Up that forced this resolution, when in actual fact you had communities in that part of the world, in that part of Australia, that were saying this is not a good idea for our local communities that are dependent on this. Kudos to the coalition.
All right, well, let's move on and discuss state politics. Obviously, that's what you guys do in Canberra a lot of the time. We've got the New South Wales government looking to slash and burn its way through the education sector in its state, right at the time, by the way, that the federal government is announcing a massive injection of funds, apparently in relation to the Gonski review. How is this going to work? I mean, Ed Husic, let me ask you. Kelly O'Dwyer was talking about, the idea of putting your foot on both the brake and the accelerator all at the same time. My dad managed to drive around like that without any trouble for years. But I was going to say mum, but then I'd be branded as sexist. But quite seriously, I mean, that is the equivalent in the education space, isn't it? You've got a state government slashing funding at the same time that you've got a Commonwealth government saying that it's going to massively increase it.
And what we've been trying to do is get the agreement with states and start talking through what we will do to breathe life into Gonski and change the way in which we fund education in this country and ensure that we get better outcomes, ranging from teacher development through to the actual end product itself.
You're putting a whole bunch of policies in place that you won't be around to implement. I mean, you're a strong Rudd-backer. I want to ask you how the numbers count's going, but I mean, you know as well as anyone knows inside the Labor Party that you won't be around after the next election if you don't change leaders to be able to do all these things. And the policy that you're talking about isn't going to be implemented until well after 2014.
So with funding cycles for education, they run on 4-year cycles. So these are things that need to be worked out over long periods of time, and we want to be able to get those put in place. And what we've had in New South Wales is we've seen today effectively $2 billion over 4 years that will be cut out of both independent and public education. So we do have people here in Canberra who've been concerned and running a scare campaign saying that independent and Catholic schools would lose money under our reforms. Wrong.
Well, no,
but where we are seeing that happen is coalition state governments actually doing what federal Liberals have been claiming as a scare campaign for some months now.
Well, let's throw that hospital pass straight to Kelly O'Dwyer, because it is true that there are massive cuts that look to be happening in New South Wales, at least Queensland as well, really, based on the current budget happening by state governments. Is this a little bit of a window into the kind of government that a coalition government federally would look like?
Well, first, Peter, let me just respond to a couple of the comments that Ed just made. And there is one thing I do agree with him on. It does take a long time to actually plan education funding. Now, this government has had a number of years to plan that next quadrennium of funding. And in the latest announcement that we saw by Julia Gillard, the fact that she plans to spend billions of dollars, she claims, to inject that into the education sector, we've seen no detail as to exactly how that money is going to be spent, nor have we found out exactly how it's going to be paid for. We're simply told that they're going to start now negotiating with the states. There is absolutely no certainty under what the federal government has proposed for the independent or the Catholic school sector, the independent sector, because they have no idea as to how much money is going to be coming their way in that next quadrennium of funding. Now, you want to ask me about the state government in New South Wales and the announcement that they've made. Well, look, you know, I've certainly stood up here in this place and delivered a number of speeches about independent schools and the fact that I'm very concerned that this current federal government is looking to cut funding for independent schools, which is going to reduce choice for parents.
What's the state government that's doing it now in New South Wales? You'd be prepared to slap them down, wouldn't you?
Well, frankly, I think they need to think very carefully about that, because I think choice is very important for parents. I think our education system is very important for parents. And I think, though, that the government would like to be able to create a smokescreen around the state government. They can't, though, hide behind the announcements they've made. They need to actually justify where the money is going to be coming from with their federal spending plan, which now adds up to over $120 billion in a budget blowout.
Well,
I'm happy to take away any concerns. We've said that no independent school, no other non-government school would lose funds under what...
Well, they won't have any funds left. They won't have any funds left to lose because they'll have all been cut by Barry O'Farrell. So let's move on. Ed Husic, my control room's telling me that you look like you're looking unhappy at me at the moment. Is that true?
There's probably a list
friends,
here somewhere of reasons. There's a list of reasons here why I'd be unhappy with you, Peter, but I do enjoy coming on the show, like I enjoy pulling out my own fingernails sometimes.
Well, I want to show you a clip now.
Can I just not have Twitter go overtime on my responses to you?
Well, I just want to quickly show a clip because 10 Breakfast News. Now, admittedly, nobody watches that, so we'll try to help them out by showing it here. But there was an interview this morning, I think it was, with Chris Bowen. So in case it went unnoticed, let's just take a look.
Here's the thing, Chris. The thing is, and it comes back to what you said originally, it is the image of this, it is the message that you're sending is vitally important. Now, I know we would never do this and I'm not condoning it, but if you saw women and children being whipped as they got offshore in Nauru, that is the kind of thing that sends a strong message as they're pushed into holes on Nauru. Now, obviously, we would never do that, but the stronger the message you send, the more effective it's likely to be.
Well, obviously, you're right, Paul. We would never, ever do that. We need to treat people humanely and with respect.
Anyway, what do you say about that? I mean, some people really in broadcasting missed their call. They should have gone into politics. I mean, Ed Husic, you guys are pretty desperate to kill this issue off. Are you sure that you can rule that out?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me with this question? Seriously? You know, you got me. For a moment, I actually thought you were being serious. So, you know, big tick to you. Great stuff.
And Kelly O'Dwyer, you guys try to outbid Labor on asylum seekers almost every week. Towback boats, TPVs, you're not going to extend it to whipping women and children?
Look, even I wouldn't make that quite outlandish, outrageous suggestion that was made. And I feel a bit sorry for Ed because he's going on tomorrow to actually answer some of those questions on Channel 10. So,
oh, is that right?
Luck.
Oh, well, we'll try to steer a bit of traffic their way, help them out in the ratings. All right, Kelly O'Dwyer and Ed Husic, we are right out of time. Appreciate you joining us on this episode of Showdown. I'm sure you'll both be beating down the door to come back. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Ed.
See ya.
We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, new Greens Senator for Tasmania, Peter Wish-Wilson, joins us again, obviously out of Canberra. Back in a moment.